Today's lesson is going to be how to make this really cool beanie. It has got a button flap, and this is actually a normal size beanie, it's just too big for Mrs. Foamy. So you have the flap there, and it also has this really cool brim that is ribbed and is made separate from the beanie. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment in the boxes below. First of all, we need to go and make the basic beanie, and then I will show you how to make the ribbing. And then what we need to do is stop about 1 to 2 inches short of the length that we want it. Now Mrs. Foamy's got a small head, so this actually looks a little bit big on her. So this would actually be shorter on your head. So you want it to about sort of just above your ears. So once you have your beanie to that stage, then we make our strip. And I'll show you how to do that. And it's still connected to the yarn, and I've still got my hat connected to the yarn as well, just in case I need to add a few more rows. So then what we are going to do is attach this band onto the beanie so that it's like that. And we've got this ribbed band on our beanie there. So this is what we're going to do. So first of all, we need to follow the basic beanie tutorial, and I will put a link in for you. And then what we need to do is stop about 1 to 2 inches short of the length that we want it. Now Mrs. Foamy's got a small head, so this actually looks a little bit big on her. So this would actually be shorter on your head. So you want it to about sort of just above your ears. So once you have your beanie to that stage, then we make our strip. And I'll show you how to do that. And it's still connected to the yarn, and I've still got my hat connected to the yarn as well, just in case I need to add a few more rows. So then what we are going to do is attach this band onto the beanie so that it's like that. And we've got this ribbed band on our beanie there. So this is what we're going to do. So leave this yarn attached, because if by some chance you make this too short, you can just add a couple of more rows here to make your beanie long enough. So what we want to do is make a chain as wide as you want your band. So that's about 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches wide. So you just want to make your chain as wide as you want your band. So we have our chain, so it's only a few. So just add about 1 or 2 stitches more, because it might shrink when we put our stitches on. And the band is worked in the back loops only. So first of all, we need to put our foundation row in, and we're going to use a half double crochet for this stitch. You can use a single crochet or a double crochet, doesn't matter, completely up to you. And if you're using the half double crochet, you want to go into the second chain from the hook. We do not count the 1 on our hook, so that's 1 and 2. So going into that stitch with a half double crochet. So the half double crochet was wrapping your yarn going into the stitch. Yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through all 3. And then working 1 in each chain all the way to the end. Once we get to the end, we want to chain 2. Spin your work around, and we're going to work back down the row, but we're going to be going into the back loops only. So turning your work on, so you're looking at the top, we have the 2 loops at the top here. There's the back loop there, because this one here is our front one. So going into the back loop, oops, first of all we need to yarn over, go into the back loop, yarning over, pulling up a loop, you have 3, yarning over, pulling through all 3. So working into that back loop again. So our front one's here, looking into the back one, making sure you're doing the right stitch, of course. So just work this entire row into the back loop only. If that was in a pattern, it would be BLO, back loop only. Coming up on our last stitch here, there's actually 2 stitches left. There's that one there and our chain stitch. So going into that last one into the back loop. And then when we go into our chain, we don't go into the back loop. So then going into the chain, for some reason I actually turn mine around, it just feels easier for me. And going into the chain there, and completing your stitch. See how we're starting to get this rib here, chaining 2 and turning our work. And we want to work this row exactly how we did the previous row, into the back loops only. Now the first one here is our first stitch. We do not go into there because we've got our chain, counts as our first stitch. So we go into that second one, working our back loops only. And what we need to do is continue with this until it is long enough, and I'll show you how long it needs to be. So this is my beanie, and our strip needs to be long enough to go all the way around the outside of our beanie, plus about 1 inch, because you are going to want it to overlap. So let me just grab my strip. And I haven't woven any ends or anything. So when it's sewn on, it's going to overlap. But what I've done is I haven't cut off the yarn, so if I need to add, once it's sewn on, if I need to add a few more rows, I can. So it's overlap like that, and then our button goes here. Or buttons, depending on how big you want it and how many buttons you want to add. So what you need to do now is measure it for size and make sure it fits. So grabbing your band, lining it up like that. Does it fit? Yes, great. If it doesn't, you can add a few more rows on your beanie there, because you wouldn't have cut off your yarn. So don't cut off your yarn, because we need this to attach our strip. Sorry guys, I forgot to mention that you need to cut off about 2 feet of yarn for sewing on. So 2 feet is about 60 centimetres. You need quite a lot because you're stitching all the way around your beanie. So now we are going to attach our strip to our beanie. So this is the end that I started, because this is my tail, and we are going to be sewing these 2 layers together. So threading your needle, and this will be attached to your beanie. I actually cut mine off and forgot about it. So this will be attached to there. So even if you cut it off, doesn't matter. So threading through both layers, and I'm actually going to tie that so it doesn't come out, and then I'm going to sew the short piece in later. So what we're doing is just going through both layers with our needle. Now you can slip stitch this on, you can crochet it on, or you can sew it on. I think this gives you the neater join, because when I slip stitched it on, it left a little ridge and I didn't like the way it looked. And also if you crochet it on, it'll give you that same look. So I'm thinking just for this project, it's better to sew it on. And you want to make sure as we go along that it's laying nice and flat. I've done it before and it started to pucker and it didn't look right. So as you go along, you want to make sure that it's not doing that. So off you go. Sew around the outside. And I will meet you when we get to the other end. So I'm coming back around to the beginning of the beanie. So I've sewed on my brim there, and this is where we started and this is where we finished. So what you want to do is grab your brim and put it in the front so it's going to overlap the part you already sewn on, and then just those last few stitches to sew it on, and then you want to overlap. So I've just got one more stitch there, and then overlap onto the bit we've already sewn on, and depending on how far you want to overlap it is entirely up to you. I'm just going to overlap it for about 1 inch. And I've actually got all this left over, so that's fine. I can just undo it because I haven't finished it off yet. And you can have the flap as long as you want. So you could put it all the way around there and add a button. You could do it all the way around like half so that that's where it's finished. You could do it all the way around to this side and put put the button over there, all the way over there, so it looks like you've got like a strap on your beanie. That'll look pretty cool. Sort of like on those newsboy hats. I think some of them have the big strap that comes across. But the pattern that I'm going to make is for my mum, and she just wanted that little bit like there, and I'm just going to make it about 1 inch, 1.5 inches long, so I've got to pull out some of there. So back to what we were doing. I just can't stop having all these ideas. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck, because you see things, you go, oh, I'm going to make that, and you end up making something else. But I've actually got to make this to pattern, because it's what my mum wants. So now I'm just stitching a bit of the flap down, and I'm just going over the top where we stitched it on here on the previous part. So I'm going to do that and then I'll come back to you. Sorry guys, back again. Now you don't have to stitch this part down at all. We've overlapped it. You could leave it like unstitched here and then have that as a little flap. I think that's what I'm actually going to do. So I'm going to pull out just a few of those stitches. Until it comes back to where it overlaps. So this is our split there. I'm going to leave that stitch in here just so it's nice and secure down like that. I'm going to sew my ends, and I'm going to have this as a flap that's not sewed down but with a button. I think that's going to look quite cool too. So this is what I have. This is the flap that I haven't sewn down. I'm going to fold that over, and I'm just going to sew in my ends and then find a button. So there we go, I have it all down there, and I found this button. Not sure if I'm going to stick with this, but I'm going to use this for the tutorial. And you just want to sew your button on. Perfect size.